Hello, this is Elizabeth Lynch, and this is Managing C Performers, a training that's part of the Direct Supporter Training Certification Program. If you are participating in the Direct Supporter Certification Training Program, it is essential that you have your workbook at minimum downloaded, if not printed and in front of you at this time. You're going to be walking through the workbook as we go through this training, so it's going to be very important that you have it in front of you. If it's not in front of you, please pause this video at this time and go ahead and download it. Okay, let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about a sadly common management issue in regards to what to do when you have someone that's underperforming on your team. So what's the problems with having C performers is what I like to call them, or people underperforming on your team? Well, first of all, C performers create unnecessary chaos for a department because they cause everyone around them to have to work hard to make up for their shortcomings. As a result, C performers can cause A performers to leave. People who are really good at what they do, they get very frustrated when people around them are not held to high performance standards and high expectations, and they get very frustrated that they get pulled down because they have to clean up a mess of someone else. In addition, it's just incredibly risky and potentially detrimental to your business, especially here at Fathom working on client work. We don't want someone who could hurt our reputation with the client, hurt our ability to keep that client, etc. So, there's definite issues in having underperformance on your team, which is why we're going to be going through this training today, so you understand what to do when you start to see underperformance, so you can fix it either through coaching or through an inevitable termination. So when you start to notice poor performance, and I want to be clear here, at the second that you notice poor performance, not after months of poor performance, but when you start to notice it. First, you want to ask yourself, how long have they been a C performer, or how long have they been underperforming? Is it a situation where they've been a top performer for years and all of a sudden their performance isn't there, or have they had ongoing performance issues? If they've been a top performer and all of a sudden something's changed, you might want to see if there's something going on in their life. When people are going through health, relationship, family issues, this does play out at work through poor performance. In a situation like this, we want to tiptoe here and be cautious and really just be there for the person, and also communicate that we want to help them so that they don't have their job at risk in addition to everything else they're going through, making sure that they're aware of what they need to do to keep their job and not have to go down a path in which now they're going to have compounded issues if they're lacking job security, as well as going through something with their family or their personal health, etc. But we'll also be, depending on the situation, going more than halfway to make sure to support them as well. But in a lot of cases, that's not the case, right? It's that there's not something going on. It's that they've had poor performance from the beginning, or over a period of time. Maybe they moved into a new role, have poor performance, etc. And that's when we need to dig in deeper and start coming up with a plan. The next question is, are they in the right role? Did you move them into a new role or promote them and now they're struggling? Was this the right role last year, but as things have changed in the industry, it's not the right role today? Is there a better role for them at Fathom? I want to be clear. If the role is not right for them, you might want to consider moving them, but moving someone into a new role needs to be thought through. We can't just push someone into a different role because they're underperforming. You want to consider changing their role only if they fully exemplify our core values, right? They are someone we want at Fathom, and they have incredible potential. They're just struggling in the current reality of their role. And you want to move them if there's a role that's better suited to their expertise. If we think that they're going to run into the same problems in this new role as their current role, then it's probably not best to move them, right? But maybe they have a really hard time being strategic and talking to clients, so being in a more executionary behind the scenes role would allow for a better fit for them. We want to think through those things. Do not consider moving someone if much of their poor performance is core value related. We do not have patience for poor core values, and if you move them because their performance is around core values, it's not going to improve their core values, right? It's just going to make it someone else's problem. Okay, it is very unlikely to move a C performer to an A performer. I want to be clear on that. This only time this is not the case is if they're a C performer due to outside circumstances, like something going on in their personal life. When that gets cleared up, then their performance will typically get restored. But it's very hard if someone has ongoing issues with performance to move them into being a top performer. Now, that said, that's not true if someone has ongoing issues with performance, but they don't have clear KPIs, they haven't had the right training, they haven't had the time to prove themselves, the right tools, etc. But generically speaking, if they've had all those things, it is really hard to move into an A performance. So what do you do? What do you do when you run into poor performance and you've asked these questions and you know it's not a role issue, it's not a personal issue. Now what? Well, first of all, you need to answer, what's the goal of working with this person? What performance would be necessary to move him into B performance and then to move him to A, right? So if we're going to coach this person, what's the outcome that we're looking for? What's the goal, and what should this person's goal be just to be an employee at Fathom? What's their current reality? So if our goal is to be hitting X KPI, what are they today? Are they 50% of that? Are they 25% of that? What's that current reality? Because that will play a role into deciding what to do. What are your options? So you could do specialized trainings, you could do weekly coaching, you could have them shadow someone, but you want to be realistic. What are the options that are right for this person to help move them up in performance? As we look at poor performance, we want to decide, can we move them up? Should we move them up? And if so, how are we going to move them up? Or if that's not possible, what are other options, which is likely termination? So, what are your options in regards to what you could do to help move this person into being a B performer, realistically speaking? So if they don't have the competencies to improve, don't try to just give them a bunch of stuff to do to try to improve, right? If they have horrible attention to detail, don't give them a crap ton more things to learn if that's going to get in the way of it. You might want to put a QA process into place because they have great potential to be resourceful, and if they just follow this easy QA process, they can move forward. But let's not set up a bunch of obstacles for them to jump over that's actually not going to move their performance. And then what action are you going to take? So you have a lot of options, but are you going to coach them? Are you going to look down a termination path? What actions are you going to take? So what are these possible actions? Well, really there's three. You can start a coaching plan with clear communication on where they are. I would say 90% of the time this is what we end up doing. You can do a performance improvement plan with coaching. So I want to talk about the difference between the two. So a coaching plan with clear communication is a plan on how to move someone forward. A performance improvement plan, though the hope is to move someone forward, is a tool that you use to be incredibly crystal clear that termination is in this person's future if they do not improve. So we look at these situations, and we're going to talk about it in detail later in this training. We look at these situations on a basis where they have not been communicated to, but it's detrimental to keep them in the company, and we need to put communication into place immediately because termination is likely going to happen. And then the next option is just straight out terminating right now. So if you are starting this process and you're at the point that you want to terminate, you are incredibly late to the game. This should not be a case. Really the goal is that you're going down these options as a process. You've been coaching, maybe they're not getting it. You might need to do a performance improvement plan to really get them to see the large impact of them not hitting their expected goals. And then if they don't hit that, you terminate. You should not be starting this process with termination in mind. The goal is that you're getting at it ahead enough so that you can start the coaching, and then if the coaching doesn't improve, termination would be an option. So you've thought through your plan, right? You've answered these questions on what your options are. You've decided what actions you're going to take. Most of the time it's going to be communicating or creating a coaching plan with clear communication. And now the important part comes. Communication, like I just said. So communication is the most important piece of this entire process. It is better to err on the side of over communication. This is the biggest issue that I see in managers. This is not an easy conversation to have. To tell someone that they're not meeting performance expectations is hard, right? It seems not nice. And people don't want to have this honest conversation, but you're actually really hurting your employee if you don't. It is incredibly crucial that you communicate incredibly clearly, and we're going to talk about what that looks like, and you err on the side of over communication. There should not be any confusion on where they stand, and therefore, if they don't improve, what could happen to them. So what do you say? What does clear communication look like? First of all, you say, you are not meeting expectations. You need to be that crystal clear. They need to know that what they are doing, if they continue this way, will prevent them from being able to continue as an employee here. So you need to say, you are not meeting expectations. What's nice is quarterly now in the monthly review, there's a box to check on whether they're below meeting or exceeding expectations, so that can help navigate a conversation and they can see that on an ongoing basis. But it's essential that you say this out loud. People automatically assume they're at least meeting, if not exceeding. It's just human nature. So you need to be crystal clear to them that they are not meeting expectations. Then you say, the expectation of your performance is blank, right? And this should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time frame. These are likely the KPIs, right? The expectation of performance is this. You are actually here, so here's how you're performing compared to what the KPIs are. Here's the plan to get you to where you need to be. Over the next 2 months, we're going to start, doing this, whether it's meeting more frequently, doing a training, doing a QA process, whatever it might be. Here's the plan that we're going to help coach you on so you can hit these goals that we have. To get to that plan, you need to do these things, take these trainings, read this book, prioritize stuff, communicate when you're having issues, whatever that is. And then how do you feel about this plan? This is important. How do you feel about this plan? Give them the chance to talk about this and give them a chance to answer any questions. One really important thing to communicate is if expectations have changed over time, you want to be clear on that. So a common mistake I see at Fathom, or not mistake, but common happening I see at Fathom is, a year ago or 2 years ago, an employee was a top performer. They were incredible, and they were told on an ongoing basis, you're great, you're great, you're great. Everything you're doing is awesome. They're giving raises, they're getting glowing reviews. Well, then fast forward 2 years, they are still operating as if it was 2 years ago. They're doing everything that they were told was right 2 years ago. What's the problem with that? Well, in a lot of companies, that's not a problem. But at Fathom, our industry is changing at such a rapid pace, and our demands from our clients are growing at such a rapid pace that what worked 2 years ago to make you a top performer likely doesn't cut it today and likely makes you an underperformer. So if you're not growing with the industry and with the client demands, then likely your performance is changing from what was great to underperforming. If that is the case, that needs to be communicated. This is an employee who was told many times that what they're doing is right. They're doing everything right, and as a result, they're a top performer. So it doesn't make sense all of a sudden to be doing those same exact things and being an underperformer. We need to fill in that gap for them. We need to show them, listen, yeah, you were great, but the industry has changed in these ways. Our client demands have changed in these ways. Your performance has not adapted to that. So what we want to do through coaching is help transform your performance to adapt to that. And if you can't, you're not cutting it, and you're not going to be here. We need to see significant improvement. You need to be that clear and address that change, because that change is a big common thing I see at Fathom that makes it hard for people to wrap their head around why they're underperforming when a few years ago they weren't. And then when you meet with this person, every time you meet, you want to be as crystal clear as you were here. You want to go through this entire strip again. You are not meeting expectations. The expectations of you are X. You are here. Maybe they've improved, and you can say, hey, you've improved. You're not where you need to be, but I see forward momentum. Or maybe they haven't, and communicate to that. But every single time you meet, you need to be this crystal clear and say all of these things to ensure that they know where they stand performance-wise. After you go through this process every single time and communicate this way with this full script, now your job is to listen. You want to make sure that the person you're coaching feels heard. They just got a lot of information. Some of it might be surprising. It's hard for them to take it. You want to give them the avenue to get out what they need to get out so that they can move forward, right? You don't want them holding on to stuff, holding on to questions, holding on to confusion or resentment that would keep them from moving forward in performance. So give them a chance to feel heard so that they can take in this feedback and make action from this feedback. And then take cues from them. So what do these cues look like? Well, first of all, you should be watching for disengagement. What does disengagement look like? People saying, yep, 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 whatever, yep, and not actually engaging with you, right? They're just trying to hurry it on, they're being a yes man, etc. When you see disengagement, you need to call it out. You need to say something like, it seems like you are disengaged. Is this true? Tell me what you are feeling. And give them a chance, again, to feel heard, because you want to let them move through this emotional barrier so that they can move forward in performance. Now, if disengagement continues, you need to call them out on that and have them take action. What that looks like is saying, I'm willing to invest some time to help your performance improve. I'm willing to invest in you, but I need to see that same investment from you. Is this something you're willing to do? If you're not convinced, ask them to take a few days to think about this. And when they make a decision, have them write you a letter about why they still want to be here. Your job in this conversation isn't to force them to want to still be here, right? Your job is to make sure that they become engaged in an action to move forward. That action will likely be to want to improve to be here, but sometimes it will be a, you know what? I'm throwing up a white flag of surrender. I'm not happy. You say I'm not performing. I think I'm performing, but the data shows otherwise. I don't think I can get to that level. But people don't know what to do. So you can use this as an avenue to have a conversation. And if they really seem stuck like this, you can bring me into the conversation and we can talk about a different avenue, which is transitioning them out. We don't do this for everyone, but sometimes when people have good core values and their performance is struggling and they're having a hard time seeing how they could even move forward in performance to be meeting expectations, we can help them decide to leave Fathom, get a chance to look for a job while they're here in a short time frame, help them transition their accounts and leave. And what this allows for is, first of all, speed to this happening, because let's say we give them 6 weeks to transition out versus a 3-month performance improvement. Now, we realize they're not going to make it or that they don't want to make it in half the time. Also, with this transition out, we can start hiring a replacement. We can have them transition stuff over so we have better client experience and we don't have a lack in service. But then on the flip side, this really helps them. It's easier to find a job if you have a job. We can help support them with resumes and that kind of thing. So, this is an avenue we're willing to take. We take it on a case-by-case basis. So if someone seems disengaged, if they as you're going through this, just really don't seem like they care, or they seem like they just don't even want to try to make it, that's when you can bring me into this discussion and we can talk about a path forward. The next cue to look for is confusion. People just not understanding how they're underperforming, why they're underperforming, etc. This is a sign that you're not communicating enough. You want to walk through all the details of how their performance has been lacking. I want to be clear here. You want to bring as much examples of data as possible, and going into this conversation, you want to have prepped and brought examples with you. Because what happens is this is not an easy conversation to have, right? And if they ask you a question like, well, give me proof or give me an example of a time where I did that, it is human nature to blank, right? That's how we're all wired. If you bring these examples with you and you've prepared, you're not going to blank, and you can give them the examples they deserve to know how they're underperforming. We want to make sure that everything we're saying is backed up with data. So you need these examples so they really understand what they've done and the impact that has. Speaking in generalities and not having the data to back them up, A, is not going to help them, and B, is really incredibly unfair to them because we're not able to speak in specifics. The last one to look for is anger. Anger, just like these other two, will put up an emotional barrier and not allow them to move forward. And you really don't want someone angry at Fathom, right? Because they're not going to deliver for the clients. It's going to impact the people around them. Your job as a manager is to help diffuse this anger and help them hopefully want to take a step forward in improving their performance. You don't want to get them all fired up and then let them go back to their seat and now they're going to lash out at people around them, at the clients, on the work, at you, and just create this really hostile work environment. So if you see anger, you really want to navigate that. Recognize that they're angry. Say, hey, I see that you're angry. Let's talk through it. Tell me what you're feeling. And give them a chance to be heard. The more that people can feel heard, the more it diffuses their anger. I want to note that anger comes in two forms. Verbal is the most easiest to pick up, right? They're yelling, they're screaming, they're saying they're angry. Nonverbal is just as important a form to look for. And you can tell that because their face expression, they're crossing their arms, they're pushing back, or they might be even leaning in because they're getting heated. You want to watch for both, and you want to call out both, and you want to use this coaching avenue as a chance to defuse their feelings so that they can move forward. Things to avoid saying in these conversations. These are really important because you want to make sure you're not giving mixed messages to people you support. So first of all, you want to avoid saying, you're a good employee. It's human nature to want to say something nice when we get into these situations. It really is. You have bad news to give and you want to soften the blow, and so you just start, kind of talking without thinking through it. And a lot of times you say something like, you're a good guy, you're a good employee, etc. The problem is by saying this, you're giving a mixed message. They're going to hear you're a good employee and really believe it. And so everything else that comes after that or came before that is not going to have as much of an impact because they were just told by you they were a good employee. So you want to make sure to avoid making a statement like that. Also avoid saying, you're doing a good job, I just want to help you get better. Well, top performers, you can say that too, but people who are in an underperformance situation who could end up being terminated if they don't improve, it's not fair to say to them that they're doing a good job and you just want to coach them to be better because, again, they're going to hold on to that they're doing a good job and they're not going to see the urgency that's necessary to change the impact of their work, aka they're not going to know what their termination is in their future if they don't improve. So you don't want to give that mixed message. In other words, this is not the time to be nice. Again, it's human nature. These are hard conversations for us to have. When you're sitting in this room, you're about to have this hard conversation, you want to be able to give something positive, give them a nice little glimmer of hope. But that's really not fair, right? In the long run, being nice is mean to this employee because it's giving them false hope and taking away that sense of urgency that if their performance doesn't improve, what would happen? Because the bottom line is if they're not improving, you and them and myself are going to end up in a room together talking about termination. And, that conversation is typically going to end with them packing their desk. The goal is for that not to be a surprise, for them to really start seeing how that they can improve so they don't have to be terminated. So the clearer you can be, and I want to be clear, it's not about being mean, it's about being clear. The clearer you can be about their lack of performance now, the nicer it is for them in the long term. So it's really about rethinking what being nice means. Saying something nice to make them feel better in that moment is not nice. It's going to hurt them long term. Okay, so you've gone through communicating with them that they're not meeting expectations, what to say, what not to say. Now you want to set a regular meeting schedule. And this will vary person by person. At a minimum, everyone's in monthly reviews. You should all be having monthly reviews with the people you support. It is essential that in these monthly reviews, you are talking about the same stuff you talked about in whatever meeting you had to discuss that they're underperforming. You want to talk about their current performance, what their performance should be, the actions needed to hit expectations, the time that's allowed to hit these expectations, and you need to be as specific and measurable as possible, including bringing data to that, bringing examples. This should be happening in your monthly review. You should be, not only saying it in monthlies, but putting it in their monthly review document. But in some situations, you're going to need more than a monthly. Again, everyone is a case-by-case basis. There's not an easy, one-size-fits-all solution to underperformance. If they're having a hard time with time management and prioritization, you might want to meet with them weekly as a quick huddle to help them prioritize so they can build the muscle on how to prioritize. And then, after you do that for a month, they have that muscle and they can move on. Or if their performance is really not good, you might want to be meeting weekly to show them that they're still not meeting it because we need to expedite it to maybe a 6-week, review process to decide if we should terminate or move forward versus the 3-month. So it's really case by case. You can come and work with me on what that case would look like. But you likely, in a lot of situations, are going to want to look at more than monthly. So what about documentation? So I think this is a word that's tossed around a lot, especially with termination, but people really don't understand what it means. And the other issue is people start documenting when they decide to terminate, which is not ideal. So let's talk about what documentation is. First of all, why do we document? First and foremost, it protects Fathom. By documenting their pattern of underperformance, and having this on an ongoing basis, when they have to get terminated, should they get terminated, if they deem that their termination is unlawful and takes us to court, we now have proof of what warranted their termination. Um, there's a lot of questions of, well, this is an at-will state. Do we really need to do this? Yes, you need to do this. Even if someone, we work in an at-will state, they want to take us to court, they really don't have a case on their hands. Once a lawyer sees this documentation, that will allow them to drop the case, and we won't have to get tied up in massive legal issues. So you always want to document. But in addition to protecting Fathom, if you document and do it right, you're also protecting the person, because documentation shouldn't be done in secret, right? You're not hiding this. This is a form of communicating with the individual that you're also putting in writing and saving. And so this is another way to amp up your communication so that they can see that you're underperforming. So when should you start documenting? Now, you should start documenting the second you see an issue. Even if you see what I call a hiccup in performance, which is that, they're good. Oh, they have this little hiccup that they did something not good. They're good. Because sometimes these hiccups become repeated offenses that turn into a prominent problem, etc. So the longer history we have of documentation, the better. So start documenting the moment you see underperformance. Note, if they aren't meeting expectations, this should already be in the monthly review. Monthly reviews are a good tool to look at documentation. And when someone comes to me and says, hey, we're having issues, I think we want to terminate this person, I look at their monthly reviews, I look at their annual reviews, I look at all these and see, have we done the right job in communicating and documenting what's happened? So at a minimum, you should be putting in their monthly reviews issues you've had that month, how they are in their performance, etc. What's the best way to document? So first of all, monthly reviews are a great way. But in addition to your reviews, to your client meetings, to whatever it might be, what you should do is, after you have a meeting with them, send a recap email about what you discussed. Hey, as we discussed in that client meeting, or as we discussed in your monthly review, you're underperforming in these ways. Reiterate the facts. Include any review forms. Include any examples. CC yourself in this email, and BCC me. And I say BCC myself because I will just move that into an employee folder. It's a confidential folder that only I have access to, that we save. And so if we do have to pull up documentation, it's already there and saved for us and at our fingertips. So this recap email, A, lets them know the impact of their performance, and B, documents it for you. So it's an incredible, easy tool that makes you an efficient manager and makes you a manager that's communicating well, and you're also getting your documentation done. So what about a performance improvement plan? We talked about this earlier, right? So you have three options typically. You can do a coaching plan, you can do a performance improvement plan, or you can terminate. So performance improvement plans, again, they're not a coaching plan. This is what you pull out when we think termination is truly inevitable, and we want to make sure the communication is there, that they know that they're not performing, and if they don't improve their performance in a short amount of time, they're no longer going to be an employee. I want to be clear here. These are not always needed. These are needed if you feel termination is inevitable and you feel the person is clueless on the situation they are in. So sometimes we run into a situation where they haven't been communicated to enough, and it's a true jeopardy to our business to keep them. We would likely go with a performance improvement plan to make it incredibly clear the impact of their performance and the jeopardy that their job is in, so that they have clear warning and clear documentation on moving forward. There is an example in your workbook of this document, but it's a very formal document. I have to sign it, they have to sign it, and you have to sign it, so we can all be in agreement that we're all on the same page. It talks through the specifics of underperformance. It gives a set date as to when performance needs to improve by and what that good performance looks like. And it says in writing, if you don't improve, termination will likely be inevitable. So this is a very formal document. If you have done everything that we've mentioned already, you may not need this document. This is for a unique situation where we really feel that they do not understand. This is kind of the last-ditch attempt to make sure they understand that termination is in their future if they don't improve. But if you've done everything, if you've been communicating this on an ongoing basis, if you've been doing a coaching plan, if you've been doing documentation with these, then you may not need this. We only need performance improvement plans maybe 10 to 20% of the time here at Fathom because managers are doing this other stuff ahead of time. Something I should note, and this is not just true with the performance improvement plan, this is true with any coaching plan. But what we always say is, you have till this date for us to relook at your progress, and at this date we need you to be hitting these KPIs. It is important to mention, and it is actually written in the performance improvement plan, but it is also important to communicate verbally that once we've hit that date and they've hit their goal, they still need to maintain that level of performance on an ongoing basis. So what I've seen in the past is someone gets put on a performance improvement plan. Let's say they're told you have 3 months to hit quota. So they work really hard. They hit quota at the 3-month mark. Whew, big sigh of relief. They did it. In their mind, they're safe. They go back to their old ways. They're not hitting quota again. Well, then 6 weeks later, we fire them because they're not hitting quota. And they say to us, I don't understand. Like, you said I needed to hit it by June. I hit it by June. Like, yeah, I haven't hit it since then, but you didn't tell me I need to. Right? That's not a situation we want to be in, but that's a situation that's common if you're not saying these kind of things. So you need to say, not only do we need your performance to get here by this date, but it needs to stay there after that date. And again, there's an example of this in your workbook. So what about core value issues? We have very little patience at this company for bad core values. I don't care if they're the best strategist, best salesperson, best whatever. If their core values aren't there, it's incredibly detrimental to the people around them, to our entire organization, etc. So we have little patience for this, and core values need to be treated as any other performance issue. So the first step is to be detailed about core values in the monthly review. You have a manager section there. You don't just have to answer the question in the manager section. You should be putting, your core value. You're not exemplifying everyone a leader. This is not okay in our organization. If you don't exemplify it, you're not going to have a career here. Here's what I need you to do. Here's examples of you not doing it, etc. You want to be specific. You want to measure it and show data, and you need to make it clear the importance of these core values. A useful tool in measuring it is a 360 survey. This allows it to take the subjectivity of you versus them and them thinking that you're just out to get them. And by doing a survey of their peers, they can see that it's more than just you that feels this way. I want to mention it can be a double-edged sword doing a 360, and I say that because a tendency of most people, but definitely here at Fathom, is when we get 360 surveys, people tend to talk more about the good stuff and less about the bad stuff. It is important that if you're going to use a 360 survey to address a core value issue that's hindering someone's performance, you talk to the people that are doing those surveys and ask them to be honest. I want to be very clear here. Just like we talked about before, this isn't about being mean. This is about being honest and bringing insightful, actionable data to that individual so they understand the issue that they're having. So it's not about, trying to be a dick and say mean things in the 360, and it's also not about being nice and sugarcoating things. It's about being honest and clear so that someone understands the reality and moves forward. A lot of times people feel like, I can't tell them to put a bad review. No, you're not putting a bad review. You're putting an honest review that someone can actually take action from. Because if it's a wishy-washy 360 review, what are they going to do from that? Nothing, right? They're not going to learn. They're not going to grow. And also it's not going to improve the coworkers around them who are likely most impacted by the poor core values. So you want to make sure you talk to people about being honest, actionable, insightful in their results, including the negatives. You also want to show someone who's struggling with core values what it takes to be a top performer. So I mean this in two different ways. First of all, what does it look like to exemplify that core value? Talk to them about how they might have handled the situation wrong and what they could have done if they were exemplifying that core value. Show them examples of people around them who are doing it. But then the other side is, what does it take to be a top performer at a company? It's more than performance. If you look at this chart, A is a top performer, B is meeting expectations, and C is underperforming. You have to be high on performance, and high on core values to be an A. You could be high in performance, but your core values could be making you a B performer or a C performer, regardless of how good at quote unquote performance you are, because we hold core values equal to performance in this organization. And you want to make sure you communicate that. Sometimes, especially coming from a different organization, people don't understand the importance and significance of exemplifying their core values, and they think that they can just get by with being a top performer because why couldn't I? I have the best sales, I have the best client retention, etc. But in our company, it takes more than that, and it's important to show them that. Okay, so when to decide to terminate? We talked a lot. We talked a lot about, our goal is to make them understand that they're underperforming and to see a plan on how to move forward. But how do you decide enough is enough? They haven't improved. It's time to terminate. First of all, it's Fathom's philosophy to go more than halfway to be clear on poor performance. So that doesn't mean letting someone underperform month after month after month after month after month, right? That's not okay. But what we want to do is make sure that they're completely clear that their performance isn't what it should be and given a chance to show that they can improve and improve. No termination should ever be a surprise. If it is a surprise, it is your fault. If you go through the steps that we talked about with communicating and being incredibly clear and putting a plan into place, it won't be a surprise that they're being terminated because the writing's on the wall when they see that they're not hitting the goals they were told they need to achieve. So if you have a clearly communicated plan with realistic KPIs and a realistic time frame and they have not improved, it's time to terminate. Right? So you've set into motion where they need to be, where they are today. You've given them a realistic time frame to get there, and every person's different. It could be 6 weeks, it could be 3 months. It depends on the situation. And they have not improved. It's time to terminate. And again, we talked a little bit before. You might not have to make it the whole 3 months. You might know in a month that they aren't even trying to improve, and then we can have that conversation. But it's about setting the right communication, being clear about where they are, being clear about where they are in the voyage to get to being a good performer. And if you've done that and there's not this forward movement from them, then that's their fault, right? And it's time to terminate. If you've done a proper job setting the KPIs from the start and communicating performance, it won't be a rush decision. So what do I mean by rush decision? I frequently have people come to my office and say, hey, we need to fire this person. It's the first time I've heard about it. It's the first time a person would have heard that they're underperforming, but their performance is definitely detrimental to the organization. They're causing massive client issues. It's a problem to have them there. Well, now we have to do due diligence to make sure that we've documented, we've communicated, etc., and things become rushed and haphazard. That's not a situation we want to be in. You want to make sure that you're, again, properly communicating from the second you see a hiccup in performance so that when we get to the point to terminate, it is an easy process because all this stuff has been done for us. The only time that we do not go more than halfway is if something does completely unacceptable, someone does something that's completely unacceptable that they need to be walked out for. This rarely happens. It's happened 3 times in my career at Fathom, so very few. We're talking about times where, coworkers are threatened by them. We're putting coworkers at risk. There's been maybe a harassment or something like that. So these are extreme cases in which they'll be walked out immediately. Something like this happens, bring it to my attention immediately, and we'll address it as is. But in those extreme cases, we obviously don't go more than halfway. We have to protect our Fathomers. So what are common mistakes to watch out for? One of the biggest mistakes I see is someone coming into my office and saying, we're having a problem with so-and-so. They're not cutting it. But when pushed for, data to back it up, give me examples. Tell me how they're not cutting it. Oh, yeah, they just don't have what it takes to make it. That's not okay. This is about having concrete data into what makes someone a top performer versus what makes someone an underperformer. This is not a gut feeling. This is not shooting from the hip. So, if you come to me and say they're not cutting it and you don't have data to back it up, the goal is now to start digging in. Do you have clear KPIs? Are they hitting the KPIs? Or do you just have a bias for them, which I will call you out for, right? So you want to make sure that everything has data to back it up. Another common mistake is having wrong, unclear, unrealistic, or unmeasurable KPIs. This shouldn't be an issue at Fathom now because we've audited all the KPIs and every position has specific KPIs that are clear and realistic and measurable. But sometimes we get into new positions, people fly from the hip, the KPIs aren't formally put into place. And really, when we dig into performance, I see that they have KPIs that are just impossible to meet or completely unclear. I don't know what the person's trying to aim for. In these situations, we have to start over, right? Now we have to put clear KPIs into place that are realistic, that are measurable, and start tracking to that performance, which could take, if the person's really underperforming, this really could draw out the process, which could be a risk to our business. So you want to make sure that all employees have clear, realistic, and measurable KPIs. And if you have questions about your KPIs, bring those to me and we'll talk through them. Oh, one of my pet peeve mistakes is giving a good annual review despite poor performance. I see this way too many times. I see, someone coming to me saying we need to terminate. Here's documentation that I have on we should terminate. And then I pull up their annual review from 2 months ago and it's all sunshine and butterflies. And I'm dumbfounded. It's like managers get into these annual reviews and they're feeling all nice and they have management amnesia and they just want to talk about the good stuff. It's not acceptable. If someone's having performance issues, it needs to be mentioned in every step of communication, in every form of communication. Giving a nice annual review in the middle of performance issues is really just mean to that individual because it's giving them false hope. This is the same for giving raises. I see this too many times as well. Someone, let's say an employee asks for a raise. Hey, it's been 2 years since I've had a raise. And the manager's like, oh, you're right. I should give you one, at least a cost of living increase. And you give them a raise and then a month later you want to fire them. I don't understand it. You should not be giving raises to people who aren't exceeding or at a minimum meeting expectations. Giving raises, just like giving good annual reviews, is giving an indication that someone's doing something right and that they just need to keep doing what they're doing to move forward. If they are underperforming, they're not doing something right. They should not be making more money. Very important. And the last mistake, and I've beaten this one like a dead horse, is not communicating enough, right? We've talked about this in mass detail. It's all about communication. So we want to practice. These are not easy conversations, so it's important to practice, how you would go about going through these types of scenarios. So we're going to do a practice here on spot, and then your homework involves some more practice as well. So here's the situation we're going to talk about. Sarah has been on your team for 3 months. She's been at the company for 5 years in a variety of roles, and when you had an opening, it was suggested that she transfer to your team. In the last month, 2 clients have reached out and said they are not pleased with the quality of work. It is lacking strategy, and it seems Sarah doesn't understand the client to the level that is needed. So the question is, as a manager, what would you do? Well, you'd start by answering these questions. What is the goal of working with this person? What is the current reality? What are my options? What actions am I going to take? When I meet this person, what is my communication plan? AKA, what is the tone and what do I need to say? And what is the meeting rhythm necessary? So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause the video and answer these questions. And when you're complete, go ahead and hit play and we will walk through what those answers should be. So go ahead and take some time and pause the video and complete that now. Okay. If you're joining us, you should be have gone through these questions and written your answers to them. I want to be clear, there's no one right answer, and given the limited data, there might be different ways to take it, but I'm going to go through what possible answers could be so you can see how this should work. So what is the goal of working with Sarah? So the goal is to coach them to be an A performer or identify that they are not a fit for the role and determine next steps, which would likely be termination. I want to be clear, this is a unique situation. She's been at the company for 5 years and she's been in multiple roles. That's a red flag for me. Multiple roles. Why is she moving from role to role? And it was voluntarily given to you, hey, take my person in your new role. Again, a red flag. Were they moving someone that was underperforming, or did they just have someone that was really good but has a passion in your area? These are things you need to understand, and the answer to all of these would determine really what your next steps are. But the goal is to either coach them to be a top performer or determine that this isn't the right fit for them. The current reality is that she's underperforming in her role due to lack of strategic impact on clients and true understandings. So what are your options? You have 3. You could coach her up, you could put her on a performance improvement plan, or you could identify if this is the right role and move her. Okay, let's look at these piece by piece. Let's start with C. Identify if this is the right role and move her. Well, as we learned, she's been in the company for 5 years and she's been in multiple roles. I don't think moving her would be a solution. You'd want to talk to people she's worked for in the past and understand her true performance in those roles, what she was good at, what she struggled with. But my guess is she's moved a few times and potentially not seen success, so we don't want to repeat that same mistake. So then we'd be looking at a performance improvement plan or coaching her up. So let's look at performance improvement plan. She's been on your team for 3 months. That's really barely enough time to ramp up. I don't think we're quite there yet. What we want to do is make sure that she's had the tools, the training, and the time to be the person she needs to be in that role. So we're probably not at a performance improvement plan. We probably want to coach her up. Again, making sure she has the tools, the training, and the time to succeed. So what actions are you going to take? Well, if with the goal of coaching up, first we want to really, again, determine that this role is right for her or not by doing a little bit more research that may not have been done in moving her into the role to begin with. So you want to understand her performance in the previous roles at our organization. And then if you can, dig into more about what's going on with clients and get peer feedback. Really get a full understanding of what her capabilities are, where she's struggling, etc. Then you want to give her the tools, the training, and the time to move forward if that's deemed necessary based on the feedback you're getting. Or deemed appropriate, I should say, based on the feedback you're getting. So what you might do is a crash course on the current clients where you show her how she can find the information she needs. You might also do a training. That says training, I apologize. You want to do training both through formal and an apprenticeship model on strategy. What do I mean by formal apprenticeship? Well, formal might be, hey, go sit down with this group's training and sit through how to do this. And apprenticeship is actually doing a peer-to-peer, showing her how you would go through something so she could build the muscle on how to be strategic. You want to go through that, once you determine that she has the potential to be in there. So she's been in there 3 months. You want to make sure she's gotten the training she needs. You want to make sure she has the tools she needs. You want to make sure she has the time to succeed. So through those actions, you should be giving her all of those. So when you meet with her, what's your communication plan? You want to be clear and firm. You want to be clear that she is not performing and communicate what good looks like and communicate the plan to get her there. We're going to do these trainings. I'm going to have you, shadow me or shadow this other person to see what good looks like, and then show her how measurement will happen of her performance and give her a time frame of what it's going to take, right? Let's touch base in a month and see that you're picking this up. Or let's, touch base, I'm going to give you 3 months to prove you can do this, and if not, you're not going to be here. Whatever that makes sense given the situation. And then what is the meeting rhythm necessary? It might be weekly for a month for apprenticeship reasons, right? Maybe she meets with you once a week and you go through a situation that she's dealing with a client, and you help guide her through what a good strategy looks like. And then for 2 months after that, you meet monthly and you evaluate after those 2 months to determine if she should be here or not. If you don't see immediate improvement, in that first month, that's when you might want to look at a PIP. You've given her now the tools, you've given her the trainings, you want to at least see forward momentum. Okay, makes sense? So let's talk about the homework. So to get certified, you have to complete this course and fill out the workbook. You have just done that, check. So then post-training, you want to complete the homework section. The homework section looks like what we just did. You have 4 scenarios, and you're going to walk through the same questions for each of those scenarios. Once you've completed it, schedule a 30-minute meeting with myself to review the homework. We'll talk through the choices you made, why you chose them. I'll give you some other ideas that you might not have had. And then once that meeting is complete, your course will be completed going towards your direct supporter certification. I want to end by saying I am always here to support you. It is not easy to have these conversations, especially if you have not seen certain, situations before. So please use me as a tool, and I am here for you every step of the way. Also, I'm here to help support you on your homework. Good luck, and that is it. Thank you.